Good morning, everyone. Welcome bright and early on a Monday. I hope you guys are well rested and ready for a great day ahead. My name is Leslie Murphy Brown, and I am a secondary program specialist for the T-Tech at VCU. And I am presenting this morning with my colleague and partner in crime, as I call her, Crystal Bell.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm also a program specialist focused on secondary, and our other focus is curriculum and instruction. So we are happy to see you all bright and early. I'm not a morning person, so we're gonna make this work as best we can today. I believe Leslie is, so she will pick up anything that I'm lacking, but we're glad to see you all this morning. We appreciate you all investing in your practice and our students. Good morning.
So a couple of things before we get going. As Kim referenced, you do have a resource folder. In that folder, there is one that says disability awareness, and Crystal's gonna drop it link in the chat box just right on time. If you click on that link, there are a couple of resources you are gonna need access to today. Some of them you received via email last week, but we wanna make sure everybody has them ready to go because we will be using them in our hour together. One of the items in there's a PDF of our presentation, but there is also a Google Slides version of the presentation. If you want to open the Google Slides version and make a copy of that, we know some people like to type in the notes section during a presentation, so we wanted to make that available to you. But we wanted to share that right at the very beginning before we get going. One more thing, as Kim said, use the chat box. To be honest, and full disclosure, Crystal and I have done a similar presentation for disability awareness for several other content academies, and it's been about a jam-packed hour and a half. We only have an hour with you guys, so we're going to be talking kind of fast and moving at a good pace. But please, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat box. And her and I are team teaching this session today, so whichever one of us isn't speaking, we'll be taking a look at that chat box. But hang on and let's get going. So in our session this morning on disability awareness, we're really looking at how can we support students with disabilities in your co-taught classroom. So we hope that by the time we wrap up here this morning in about 58 minutes, you're going to have a greater understanding for some of the characteristics of the high incidence disabilities. We are going to focus only on 5 of the disability categories. And again, those are ones that you're most commonly going to see in your co-taught classroom. We know there might be some of the other ones, but again, because we only have an hour with you guys, we had to kind of limit which ones we're going to focus on. So we went with those 5. Also, a greater awareness for students and their individual needs based off of their disability, and then knowledge of practice that should be demonstrated in the co-taught classroom to help you support those students. One reason that I believe Kim wanted this session to be first is so that you have some information about students with disabilities, maybe what is some of the specially designed instruction they may need in your classroom, or what are some of the accommodations that they may need, so that as you go forth the rest of this week, you can incorporate that along with some of the other activities that you're going to be doing. So again, that's why we gave you a lot of resources in that folder, and we hope that you find them helpful not only for our session this morning, but as the week continues on and as you go into next school year.
And so one of the things we want to just start off with as we're jumping into this, we're aware that a lot of you have a lot of knowledge already going forward with students with disabilities, different categories, but we just want to highlight a few things, hopefully just sort of refreshing you, and then again, adding to your practice. But to start off with, we know that the federal government identifies 12 categories as far as eligibility categories for students. In Virginia, we have one additional category, bringing it to 13, and that is developmental delay, which can be identified all the way up to the age of 8. We also know that we have a lot of students who receive services due to ADHD and things of that nature, but we know that that falls under the other health impairment OHI category. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we are actually going to take a poll. So it should be showing up on your screen now. Which one of these disability categories do you feel that you have the most experience and knowledge with? And thank you all. We see the responses coming in. We'll give you just a few more seconds. Again, we are short on time, so we are going to be flying. But please don't feel like that you can't stop us to ask us a question. And so again, we appreciate Kim putting in the chat. These 5 areas are representative of the students that will be most often in your classrooms. It's not to say that other categories or students with other disabilities may not be there, but these are the most common 5. All right, so let's end that poll and let's take a look at the results. As we expected, specific learning disability is usually always the highest category that we see. I'm actually a bit surprised we have both OHI and ED coming in a close, well, as second. And so, yes, this is pretty representative of what we are seeing in general in classrooms. So we appreciate you participating in that.
Okay, so we're gonna try something, get you guys up and going this morning. Crystal said, you know, she's not a morning person. She referenced that I am. This is a highly caffeinated version first thing in the morning. My students were very well aware of that. They always ask how I had so much energy. It comes from lots of caffeine, but we want to get you guys going this morning. So we're going to do a little activity with you. We hope you find it fun. Crystal will explain it to you.
So I actually need 2 brave volunteers who would be willing to read some words for me this morning. That's going to require you to come off mute. But I need to know if someone would volunteer to read some words, and it's going to be timed. So I know there's a brave soul out there. Uh-oh, Julie raised her hand. Okay, so we need 1 other person for the second. We're going to do 2 rounds of this. So we got Julie. Is there somebody else who would be willing to read some words?
I'll do it if need be.
Woohoo!
Okay, all right, we appreciate that. All right, so Julie, can you come off mute? We got to check. Check.
I'm here.
Okay, great. All right, so are you feeling good today? You ready?
Yep.
Okay, so this is what you're gonna do, Julie. You are going to read these words, not the colors, just the words.
You're going to read them from left to right, just like you would on a piece of paper.
Okay, Leslie is going to time you.
I'm ready.
Right.
You ready?
All right, I'm ready.
Okay, ready?
And go.
Yellow, blue, orange, black, red, green, purple, yellow, red, orange, green, black, blue, red, purple, green, blue, orange.
Nice job, Julie.
Blistering 11.73 seconds. Wonderful job.
Wow. Okay. All right. So Bonner, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now Bonner, I'm apologize to you now. I'm gonna switch it up on you just a smidgen.
Yes,
Okay?
ma'am.
So this time, I don't want you to read the word. I want you to tell me the color. I want you to read colors this time.
Hey, yo, so you picked an English teacher who's colorblind. This is going to be interesting.
That'll be a good point of conversation
we see what happens.
Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's pull up the colors.
Oh, that would be helpful too, right?
Mm-hmm. All right.
All right.
Here we go. All right, go.
Green, red, purple, blue, black, orange, purple, green, green, blue, yellow, orange, yellow, purple, red, black, and blue.
Okay, we appreciate you. We really do appreciate you being such a good sport, Bonner. And I'm actually glad this happened because I want to bring up a really
I'm guessing I
interesting
butchered the
point.
heck out of it.
That's okay. Because we're going to use this as a teaching moment. This is you're leading us honestly right into the next thing that we want to discuss. So pull up the next slide for me, Leslie. So the thing that we want to kind of highlight with this activity is for those of you who were just timed, right? And those of you watching, how do you think that they were feeling as they were completing this task, right? There's a lot of processing that has to go on when you're doing this. And so this is what our students are feeling when they're coming to us and they have disabilities that have processing in them. Like Julie said, nervous. And then you're under a time constraint. So not only are you trying to process, but you're trying to understand, you're trying to do it in a time manner. And so this is the same type of feeling that our students have. And even for Bonner, as he told us, hey, like, I can't see all of these colors. So these are the same things that our students are coming to us with. And so we have to kind of put ourselves in their shoes as we are giving them new content a lot of times. And, we're trying to get through it. We have to really think about how do we help our students to be successful. And so one of the things that Leslie brought up, and I've said it a couple times since she's brought that to my attention, was that imagine your students who are coming to you at the end of the day. So they're completing these tasks like Julie and Bonner have all day long. And now they've come to your class. You're the last block of the day. So they've been trying to process and do all of this stuff all day long. And so I appreciate those of you who are sharing in the chat. But these are the things that we have to think about and why we wanted to bring up this whole idea of awareness of what our students are dealing with as we are teaching them day in and day out.
And on that note, I see Clara in the chat box said defeated. Our students who they may start out the day just energized, ready to go. And by the time they get to lunchtime, they're like, I'm done. Like, I've been doing this for 4 hours now. I just can't take any more. And whether that me, retaining it in their short-term memory, maybe it's recalling it, or from short or long-term memory, it's processing. Maybe they have a handwriting difficulty and they've been writing all day long and they're done by the time they get to your class. So I would also say sometimes behaviors we start to see, they trend upward in the afternoon, but a lot of times it's just because they're done, they're worn out, they're anxious. I'm seeing a lot of good words here in the chat box. So these are things we also have to keep in mind. And so hopefully by the end of our session today, maybe you'll at least have a few more strategies in your toolbox that when you start to see these in your students when they come into your classroom, no matter what time of day, you'll have something else you can pull out and say, hey, let's try this. Let's see if this will help. That way, they feel more successful in your classroom. We are lowering that anxiety, lowering that sense of feeling overwhelmed. We've all been there, so we know what we can relate to them.
And can I just add on to that, Leslie? I love what Justin said. He said you almost feel tricked when the rules changed, right? So a good practice for teaching is always giving your kids that roadmap. So maybe that does help to decrease some of that anxiety, not switching it up on them at the last minute on the spot, especially if you have not developed that culture and that atmosphere of trust. But again, I think when kids know the direction and where they're going, some of that anxiety comes down because they're like, I know what to expect, and there's not going to be some random trick as we kind of shared earlier. In what's coming ahead.
So when we think about students in our classroom, we want to think about how are we going to support them? So we are going to look at specific disabilities, but we want to do a little bit of background building just to make sure we're all kind of talking the same language here this morning.
And so we're going to do that with specially designed instruction, SDI. You guys have heard people beat this to the ground, and we're going to beat it to the ground a little further because that is the point of students receiving services, right? It's, of course, we already know it's at no cost to the parent, and it's to meet the unique needs of the child, but it is so that you can adapt the content, the methods, and the delivery of instruction. so that they can access the general curriculum. You're not changing the content, you're not changing the standards, but you're determining the ways to help that particular student. And we're trying to make sure that our students are able to access that general curriculum. And again, that is the reason why they're receiving those services. There are some deficits that have been identified, and so we need to actually design something specifically for them that helps them to be successful. And so this handy diagram, Leslie and I have actually been looking for the source of where this came from, and we're going to keep looking for that. But it is a very good image of kind of this sort of progression. You know, our foundation, our tier 1 instruction, we're considering UDL, we're differentiating instruction. All of that is tier 1. So our students with IEPs, they're receiving that already. But again, on top of that, some of our students need even more. And so as we branch up, we see that our SDI comes in. So those are our AT, that's our strategies. Those are our accommodations that help them to access that general curriculum. And in some cases, for some students who may not be on an SOL track, some modifications and things of that nature.
So another way of looking at specially designed instruction, just help you to understand, you know, as Crystal said, specially designed instruction means that we're adapting the content, the instructional delivery, and or the methodology. It could be one of these three, it could be all of these three, it could be a combination of any of these three. That adapting can take place in whatever is determined as the least restrictive environment. Now, for most of you that are with us today, that's going to be the co-taught classroom. But it could also be in a separate classroom. Maybe your school has a study hall or an intervention period. So maybe sometimes some of the specially designed instruction is provided during that time. Maybe a student who has a disability who needs some type of specially designed instruction, maybe they're not in a co-taught class, they're in a traditional general ed regular class. So then that becomes even more where you as the general ed teacher need to make sure that you're partnering with your special ed teachers or that student's case manager to make sure that you understand, well, what type of specially designed instruction do they need? And I say that because sometimes what a student needs a specially designed instruction, we often realize, hey, this could be good for all of my students. So I'm going to make sure just I infuse this. Maybe I give some more scaffolds to this student who needs a specially designed instruction, or maybe I do a little bit of one-on-one teaching with them. To make sure they're really getting that understanding the strategy. Since you guys are all English teachers, writing is what pops in my mind. A lot of our students that struggle with writing, they need some type of strategy. Maybe it's the organization part. They need to understand how to use some type of graphic organizer or outline format so that they can organize what they're going to be writing. Or maybe it's they need to use a computer to process it because, again, going back to a handwriting difficulty, or maybe they have dyslexia and so they need some supports around that to help them. So those are all things we can kind of consider. But I think what's important here is to keep in mind that specially designed instruction can take place in whatever is determined as that least restrictive environment. It doesn't have to be in a quote resource room only. And then at the end of it, the whole reason we're doing that, as Crystal mentioned, is so that they access that general education curriculum. Approximately 99% of our students that have a disability are going to be on that SOL track, which means they need to access the general education curriculum. They need to meet those grade level standards, and it's our job to help them get there.
So one of the things that we have been finding is that the definition of what SDI is gets a little cloudy sometimes. And so one of the ways that we kind of make it a little bit clearer is to give examples. So when you're thinking of specially designed instruction, think of what am I as the teacher, what am I doing to teach that student something? So for instance, Leslie just mentioned something about a graphic organizer. A graphic organizer in and of itself can be an accommodation, but you teaching the student how to use the graphic organizer is the specially designed instruction. You can give students a mnemonic. but you actually teaching them how to use the mnemonic to walk through a process that you're doing. It could be for writing, it could be for something with comprehension. That piece of the teaching of it is the specially designed instruction. So we have included just a few examples of what specially designed instruction is. So it could be you actually teaching a strategy, you modeling something, but it's actually what the teacher is doing that has been designed for that student. So we just wanted to make that a little bit clearer, hopefully with some examples.
So as Crystal said, one of the other terms that SDI often gets kind of muddied with is differentiation. I know working with the teachers that I work with, oftentimes I hear, oh, well, I know that student has a disability, they have an IEP with accommodations, but I differentiate. Well, differentiation is not enough. Differentiation is not just for students with disabilities. As Crystal mentioned a few minutes ago, differentiation is part of good Tier 1 instruction. So when we're looking at differentiation versus SDI, yes, we are looking at how we can change up based on student needs, maybe what's being taught, which is what we often refer to as the content, the process, which is how we as the teacher teach it, or the product, which is how the students demonstrate what they've learned. So when we're talking about differentiation, yes, we're changing some things up. Maybe we're providing choice or we're providing options. I know a lot of teachers like to do choice boards or menus or different things of that nature to provide the differentiation. But also think about being English teachers, you are reading in your classrooms. Not every student is coming to you reading on grade level. Some are above grade level, some are below grade level. So when you're providing the various reading levels for whatever text that you might be reading in class, that is differentiation, okay? So if you are helping a student learn how to read something, you're going through maybe some decoding skills, or maybe you're working on comprehension and you're teaching them a strategy to kind of summarize so that they're ready for those comprehension type questions as you go through, that strategy could be the SDI. But again, your differentiation and your SDI, those are two different things. If you've ever had the pleasure of hearing Dr. Marilyn Friend speak or have read anything that she has ever written around co-teaching, you will often see that she refers to differentiation as JGT, meaning just good teaching. And again, she's going back to the idea that that is part of your Tier 1 instruction. That should be something that you are incorporating every single day, regardless of a student's ability or disability in your classroom. So if you are of the mindset right now thinking, well, I do differentiation, so I'm meeting their needs, you need to make sure that you're really looking at your students with disabilities, looking at their goals and making sure that you are meeting those goals, or at least providing the instruction that they need to help them meet those goals, to make that progress that they need to do.
And so just to make it a little bit clearer, right? We've talked about SDI, then we talked about differentiation, but what about accommodations? Because again, we are finding that all of these words can sometimes, and not everyone, but sometimes get used sort of interchangeably. So when we talk about accommodations, remember, these are supports. These are things that help students to access. They support access to the general curriculum, but they're not changing what is taught. They might, again, it might be something with strategies, but it's not changing what is taught. So kind of, if we go back to our live example we had earlier with the reading of the words, if we know that students are having processing difficulties, we may give them some extra time to take an assessment. We may cut down some of the questions, things of that nature. So those are things that we're not actually, if you think about it, we're not changing the content that they're learning. We're just helping them along the way. So those are the things that we have to think about and kind of keep all of those terms clear in our head. And so some examples, again, I kind of talked about this a little bit, but these are your things like preferential seating, could be read aloud, shortened time assignments, or extended time on tests. So that's not the whole list, but just a few examples of some accommodations.
And one reason we included some of these is because oftentimes these are ones that teachers say, oh, well, this is how I'm providing specially designed instruction. These are not specially designed instruction. These, as Crystal said, are accommodations. And when we talk about, and we try to figure out, well, what am I providing specially designed instruction, or is this that I'm doing in my classroom? Could that be considered specially designed instruction? We have to keep in mind, SDI is how we teach the students. It's how we meet their needs, and it's how we remediate their deficits. So when we're talking about specially designed instruction, it's what decisions are we making as the classroom teachers? And I say teachers because co-teachers, you guys should be making these decisions together. What are we doing to provide the instruction that is unique to allow the students in our classroom to meet those goals that are in their IEP? So hopefully we've cleared up some of the mud. If there was any mud. And again, the reason we wanted to do that before we kind of dive a little more into disabilities is we're going to ask you to look at a student who has a particular disability today and identify what are some accommodations they may need. What is some specially designed instruction they may benefit from? So we just wanted to make sure that that is clear. If you have questions, again, please make sure drop it in the chat box. We'll answer them as we go along. But for now, we're going to jump into an activity, and we hope everybody got their email last week. Bailey, thank you so much for sending that out. We do greatly appreciate it. You received an email with a link to a spreadsheet, and we asked you to look at the first tab, figure out what disability you've been assigned. The first thing I am going to say is I'm looking right now, there were about 90 people on the spreadsheet, and we only have about 50 people with us. So I'm going to go ahead and say that our groups are probably going to be a little off balance. So if you guys will bear with us, what our intent was everybody is going to, for the first time around, you have received information on a specific disability. We asked you to read that ahead of time to expedite kind of what we're doing today. When you get to your first breakout room, you are going to be in that breakout room with other people who have the same disability category. They've read the same information you have. You're going to access a folder, which Crystal so kindly dropped in the chat box, for some student plops. For these, it will have the name of the disability as the file name and then the student's name. That way you can easily identify which plop your group is reading. And then you're going to have a link to a folder full of Jamboards. So if you are assigned to breakout room 5, you're going to go into that folder and open up breakout room 5's Jamboard. And you're going to identify what types of SDI accommodations or instructional strategies would be appropriate for that student whose plop you just read. So, excuse me. We're going to give you about 10 minutes or so in the first breakout room to have some good conversations, to do your Jamboards. Then we're going to bring you back together and give you a little bit more direction for part 3, which is actually going to be the jigsaw. And this might be where it gets a little muddied, but we'll handle that along the way. So as Crystal dropped in the chat box, she did put the link for the spreadsheet, and I will pull it up so you can kind of see what it looks like. A link for our exit ticket into the chat box. It's in Pear Deck. If you're not familiar with Pear Deck, when you click that link, a screen like this one should pop up, and you have some tools. There should be a text box tool, which I will say is probably the easiest one to use to type in your answer. You don't have to click submit or anything. Once you put your answer in there, it's in there, it saves it. It's kind of like Google Drive where it just mysteriously saves it all for you. So if you would take a minute or two, again, click on that link so it opens up at least on your screen and answer those 2 questions for us. We would appreciate it. Before we turn it over, I guess turn it back to Kim so she can turn it over to the next session. Are there any questions anybody has for us? Again, you can drop them in the chat box. Crystal and I will hang out here as the next session gets started for a few minutes, just to answer any questions. Or if you want to unmute yourself, feel free.
Okay, I'm going to let you all go ahead and put those questions in the chat. And we'll get them to Leslie and Crystal. We do need to go ahead and start our next session on using co-teaching strategies. And that is going to be presented by Mary Odo and Jennifer Askew Collins. And I'll let them go ahead and get started. Thank you to Crystal and Leslie. I'm sorry. Oops.
That's okay. We enjoyed it. Thank you guys. Hope you have a great week.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Thanks so much. All right, Jennifer and Leslie, or Jennifer and Mary, when you're ready.
All right. Well, that is a tough act to follow. Thanks to my colleagues at TTAC, Leslie and Crystal, for a really excellent session. And thanks for the wonderful lead-in to the co-teaching approaches, because that's what we're here to talk about this morning then. So I am Mary Adeo. I am a secondary program specialist at VCU's TTAC. And we also have...
Hi, I'm Jennifer Askew Collins. I'm also at VCU TTAC.
All right, and we are so pleased and honored to be here today to meet with you all. All right, so we wanted to start this session by really giving a heartfelt thank you to all of our teachers who have gone the distance this past year. This has been, as we know, the most difficult year, and we really see you as our heroes and absolutely as first responders. And we thank you so much again for all your service to our students and everything that you have done. And we certainly hope that this year will be a wonderful year for you.